What is going on, everyone? This is Eric coming at you from just outside of Hartford, Connecticut, and today we're going to rant about the Atlanta Braves. This is definitely a rant that I've been waiting to do for a little bit, as the Atlanta Braves are definitely one of my least favorite teams in professional sports. And really, you'll see why. So obviously you can see the first bullet point is racist team name with a question mark by it. Now, the team name of Braves obviously isn't bad in and of itself. And I understand that it's not the worst thing in the world. I mean, there are far worse names. I mean, look at what Washington football used to be called. Look at what Cleveland MLB team is called currently. So, Braves in and of itself isn't a bad team name. But their former logo clearly was mocking the Native Americans. Therefore, that is more than racist. And we get to our second point, the tomahawk chop, where the Braves used to encourage their fans to mock Native Americans with their tomahawks by pretending to chop them. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's just inexcusable, especially today. You know, it's not acceptable anymore to mock other cultures, and I don't know why Atlanta thinks they can still get away with it when every other team has stepped back and said, we're not going to do this anymore. At this point in time, it's down to just this Atlanta team and the Chicago Blackhawks in the NHL. Everyone else has stepped back. Cleveland, obviously, for baseball, they said after the 2021 season they're going to reevaluate their name. They're going to get a new name. So, I mean, realistically, this is just inexcusable in 2021. Now, they don't play the tomahawk chop music anymore, but they don't discourage their fans from singing it and humming it and still mocking the Native Americans. Therefore, that is still a very valid bullet point. Once more, their team name is acceptable, but everything else with them is not acceptable. 1990s elite starting pitching. So, obviously, I was born in the late 90s, so I don't remember the 90s. But the 90s saw Atlanta kind of pull a dynasty. They made 5 World Series in the 90s, but only won 1 of them. Still, the fact that they won that 1 World Series means they're not a laughingstock like the Buffalo Bills. But this 90s pitching staff had Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, and John Schmaltz. These guys are all Hall of Famers. They're all great pitchers in their own regards. Now, this starting pitching staff was just so dominant that you couldn't compete with Atlanta. It just wasn't going to happen. I mean, the Phillies did it once. In 93, they managed to beat Atlanta in the playoffs, but then they would lose in the World Series to Toronto, but it didn't necessarily matter. So it just, in the end, this 90s starting pitching staff was elite and arguably probably the best starting pitching staff ever assembled in the sport. I'd have to say it is. So the fact that, they're division rivals with the Phillies, even though I wasn't alive to see them at their peak, still, it's something that's concerning. It's something that, it's not necessarily a hate thing, but it's something that, hey, congratulations, you had this great pitching staff, but you stopped my Phillies from potentially getting another couple chances at World Series. Chipper Jones. Now, I don't mind Chipper Jones as a person, but every time I'd watch Chipper Jones play against the Phillies, he would do great. The man had an average of above 330 against the Phillies. He hit so many clutch homers, he had so many clutch hits, that I grew to despise him when he was playing the Phillies. I loved watching him play other teams because he would do well, but he seemed to just love playing the Phillies. And it could have to do with the fact that in the early 2000s, the Phillies pitching stunk, and that was when he was at his prime. So, I mean, Chipper Jones, he just continued to dominate. He won the batting title when he was 38 years old. That in and of itself should speak volumes to you on how good this player was. And he was a first ballot Hall of Famer. Great player again. I respect him. I have no beef with Chipper Jones, just the fact that every time he played the Phillies, he beat up the Phillies. Bobby Cox and his winning Rays. Now, Bobby Cox was a great manager for 15 years, I think it was, when he was with Atlanta. But it just, being a rival of Atlanta means you can't support Bobby Cox. So, this team was so good. They won something like 14 or 15 consecutive titles, or division championships, I should say, division titles. They won their division 14 years in a row in the 90s into the 2000s. That's unheard of, especially nowadays. And it shows that Bobby Cox either was a great manager or just had an amazing team. Now, this team obviously is still very strong, but Bobby Cox just kind of sums up the 90s, early 2000s Braves dynasties. Ted Turner. If you have any affiliation with Ted Turner, that's a knock to me. Ted Turner is one of the slimiest people in the media, I should say. And he was the owner of the Braves in the 70s until the 2000s, I believe it was, like the late 2000s, late 70s to late 2000s. Ted Turner is kind of like Jerry Jones to an extent, where he doesn't understand that he needs to step back and let his team do what his team can do. Ted Turner literally took over and managed his club for a single game because the team was struggling in the 70s. So he basically told the coach to go on a 10-game, scouting trip, and he took over the team, but that was shut down very quickly as the team was like, the NL president was like, you can't do that, that's ridiculous. So Ted Turner just doesn't understand what he's doing. He was Jerry Jones before Jerry Jones. And he also tried to call Atlanta America's team. He tried to get every Atlanta game broadcasted on national television. I'm sorry, you're not America's team. If anyone's America's team, as much as you hate to say it, it's the Yankees. And it's definitely not Atlanta. You cannot tell me that you're America's team. And I understand this was different, but you cannot tell me that you're America's team when you haven't won a championship since DVDs were invented. The last time you had a championship title, the DVD wasn't invented yet. The last time you made a World Series, we were still using VHSs. So you cannot be America's team. Okay? You can't be America's team. Their fans hate Harper. This is just more of a comical thing. Obviously, Harper brought the hate onto himself when he, intentionally kicked up Atlanta's logo when he was a member of the Nationals. So I understand why they don't like him. But Harper's just a great player. Harper's one of my favorite players in the league. So obviously I'm biased with that because I'm a Phillies fan. But if you're going to hate Harper, good. It just means I don't like you. Atlanta's fair-weather fan base. This fan base is almost as bad as Boston and New York fans. This fan base just doesn't show up if your team's struggling. And I understand that's good according to some people. It means that you have to be good in order for the fans to show up, right? Yeah, I understand that counter. But the thing is, if your team struggles, your fans just don't show up. Atlanta's notorious for this. Look at what they did with the Atlanta Thrashers, for example. They lost two NHL teams. And they're trying to cry and get a third one. I'm sorry, you definitely don't deserve one. Look at what you're doing with Atlanta, the Braves here. They're not doing that hot in 2021, and the fans are not showing up as much as you'd think. This was a team that had championship aspirations, and they're just not doing it. So Atlanta fans, by retaliation, are saying, okay, we're just not going to show up. So, fair weather fan base. Treatment of Babe Ruth. Now, Babe Ruth is obviously a legend, and it's one of the good trivia questions. If I were to ask you which three teams did Babe Ruth play for, you're going to know the Yankees, you're going to know the Red Sox, but the third team was the then Boston Braves. He played there for a single year, and he basically was traded there so he could become the manager. And they ended up kind of backing down on that, and they were like, never mind, we don't want to do manager. I don't understand why you would trade for the guy and promise him the role of manager just to back down. I mean, this one does kind of make sense. Babe Ruth was a known alcoholic, but you had to have known that he was an alcoholic before you traded for him. You had to know this. There's a reason the Yankees didn't want him to be manager. So, just how they did it, how they treated him, he's arguably the best player of all time. I wouldn't say he is, but how you treated him is just kind of rude to me. Lastly, failing Nick Markakis. Now, in retrospect, I wish I had followed Markakis more in his career, but Markakis is probably one of the guys that sums up the type of player that I like. High contact rate, low strikeout rate, occasional power, good speed. And Atlanta, they had many opportunities to help Markakis at the end of his career compete for a ring. Time and time again, this team let him down. And it's just kind of disappointing to me, for lack of a better word. It is disappointing. It stinks that they did that. So, I love Markakis. Unfortunately, he did retire before the 2021 season. But I'm happy he's not in Atlanta right now because I feel bad for him. Now, I do have to say one good thing about Atlanta. And I'm going to say that I do like some of the players that you've had. Obviously, I'm a fan of Nick Markakis. So, there's that. You've had Ender Inciarte. I like him. So, these are guys that you have. You have Sean Newcomb, who's actually from a graduate of UHart in Connecticut. So, you got guys. You have players that I like. It comes down to, can you stop pretending that you're this great team and acknowledge that you have to fix the problems? Also, Ronald Acuna Jr., I have no beef with him. He's a good player. He's a great player. So I do want to put that out there. I do not have him. I do not hate him. So, but yeah, this is the Atlanta Braves rant. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Have a good rest of your day.